5, the ambition in the room is electric. Let's give a hand to them. We have heard today startups from seed stage, straight out of college, all the way to IPO, people wanting to be acquired, to those making the bids, to acquiring others. I heard in the room while people were having coffee that there's the same amount of people from Canada in the Valley as there is in Saskatchewan. And so that opens our eyes a lot at the ability to keep talent and capital concentrated in Canada. So it's so great to see us all tonight here. We have 2 really inspiring companies that was founded here in Montreal, remains here, and we're so excited to have them.
All right. Aujourd'hui, il me fait grand plaisir de vous présenter Fred Lalonde. Pour ceux et celles qui bâtissent des entreprises, souvent dans l'incertitude et parfois dans le chaos, Fred est le genre de personne qu'on écoute attentivement. Entrepreneur en série, il a cette capacité de voir loin, on dit même très loin. Toujours en gardant les 2 pieds solidement ancrés dans la réalité de l'exécution. Cofondateur et chef de la direction de Hopper, une plateforme de voyage qui a été téléchargée plus de 120 millions de fois, qui a servi à plus de 100 millions de voyageurs et compte plus de 35 millions d'utilisateurs actifs. Aujourd'hui, il met cette même rigueur entrepreneuriale au service du climat comme CEO de Deep Sky avec une aussi grande ambition. Je n'ai jamais travaillé directement avec Fred, mais j'ai consulté ses collègues qui travaillent étroitement avec lui. Ce qui ressort systématiquement, c'est sa capacité à rendre des idées ambitieuses étonnamment claires, à poser très vite les bonnes questions et à rester remarquablement calme lorsque les choses deviennent complexes. On me parle aussi d'un leader capable d'aller très loin dans le détail, produit, design, technologie, tout en sachant faire confiance et donner rapidement de grandes responsabilités aux talents autour de lui. Fred est aussi activement engagé dans l'écosystème entrepreneurial, notamment en siégeant au Conseil de réseau mentorat. Dans quelques minutes, nous accueillerons Fred Lalonde sur le stage ici.
Our next guest may need no introduction, but I'm going to try. Dax Dasilva is the CEO of Lightspeed, founder, author, and philanthropist. He founded Lightspeed in 2005, and in 2019, it was the largest, one of Canada's largest technology IPOs. So congrats to him, and congrats to all of his investors that are probably here. Lightspeed now employs 3,000 people worldwide and powers many retail locations across the globe. If you've swiped your debit card, you have probably interacted with the Lightspeed ecosystem. Being a leader in acquisition, they also completed 9 acquisitions in just 4 years to move to becoming a truly global brand. But one of the most inspiring things about Dax is that he didn't just chase round after round of venture capital early. He used some of the first principles that we heard from the Unicorn Founder panel. He bootstrapped for 7 whole years before accepting VC money. It's the real story of what it takes to build something meaningful. And what I really personally admire about him is once he gained his capital and leveraged, he made a stance about how he wants to be in the world and make it better. He is running the Age of Union that works to protect global conservation and climate change. It champions ecological balance. And he also is an esteemed author and writes books to share his perspective. It makes us all feel like we're not doing enough. He's always been there to answer a personal text message for me or Julie. He's a passionate mentor that feels like he will guide founders as they grow. He stepped away from the CEO, but now he's back in founder mode as the CEO of Lightspeed. We cannot wait to welcome him, one of the early stars of Montreal tech, leading a company that now has a market cap of over $2 billion. Welcome our keynote of the evening, Dax and Fred.
You go, guys.
How's it going, everybody? Another round of applause, please, for Fred and Dax.
Guys, thank you so much for accepting to do this. It really means a lot to the startup community that you guys took time out of your really busy schedules to come here and talk to other founders and students. We have something like 380 founders, 190 students signed up. So it's really exciting that you guys took the time. I'd be curious to hear a little bit of just how you guys know each other, how you met, the context, and yeah, look, I don't think anyone's asked that question before, so I'm just curious.
The green room?
We were talking about this. We don't know each other.
Yeah.
So I think once we were talking back to back on a couple of events, and once you bought a house and invited me to a party and I didn't come. This is actually the first time we've been on stage together.
Yeah, and we did get to chat in the back room, but it's a new relationship.
So the vibe is good so far. Hopefully by the end of the paddle, you guys will still be friendly. That's really cool. Like it's strange. It's like you guys have built these big, like epic, iconic companies, in each other's backyard. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, maybe first question for you, Dax, is we were talking about in the intro and the bio. You bootstrap Lightspeed for 7 years before taking on capital. Curious to hear a little bit of the inception story, right? Like you in the proverbial basement, and yeah, just gives a little bit of a sense of the early days of Lightspeed.
Yeah, early days of Lightspeed. So I mean, I was coding and was working at a startup at age 13, and I grew up in the Apple ecosystem, the Mac dealership universe, all through my teens and 20s, building software for them, doing tech support for them, and so that sort of led up to building a product for complex retail environments, multi-store situations like all those Mac dealerships. This is pre-Apple Store, so it's a while ago. So that's where the expertise came from in terms of building software for retail. And then at 28, I started the company because all of these dealerships needed the same thing. And so I was like, there's a product here. And once we have all of them as customers, they were our first 200, 300 customers. Then they started selling Lightspeed to all of their customers, all of their stores that were opening in their neighborhoods because there were dealerships all over the world. So we were kind of an international company right away. Early days was really fueled by us really sitting with those customers, watching them use the software, really understanding retail, going deep, and we had like an incredible user base right away that were experts in retail and very complex. And then we got into all of the verticals that are like a computer store, like a bike shop or a jewelry shop where there's lots of parts, lots of complexity, lots of things to transfer. And so that's sort of the DNA of the company, is to do that complex situation. And then later we moved into the cloud and we brought that DNA over to restaurant, over to e-commerce, and grew the company.
Maybe same question for you, Fred, then. And serial entrepreneur, obviously. I know Hopper wasn't a first company, but also it was like one of those like 10-year overnight success stories, right? You were in the lab for a while building Hopper, right?
Yeah, I'm about to make it obvious how much better Dax is at this than I am. So I'd sold my first company when I was 24. Came out of that, thought I was going to snowboard for the rest of my life. 6 months in, my wife's like, I'm going to leave you if you don't go do something or get a job. And our idea was we should figure out a way to use data. So this is pre-cloud. The iPhone wasn't out. And I had this theory that if you accumulated enough data in a messy category like travel, you could pull something off. So we bought $50,000 of gaming parts. You know, the gaming computers? We racked them in IKEA shelves in Sophie Ferez's office. And we tried to get a distributed database to work. The only big data platform that existed was at Google. And there was one white paper. So we lost 6 years trying to get a database to work. With absolutely no progress. People were throwing rocks at us in the street. I tried to give Sophie the money back, and she's like, no. And then, so we messed around with that. And there's a point where the technology caught up, and we also early on opened up right next to the MIT. And just through serendipity, we had a bunch of good people, but these really smart people that exist in those ecosystems, a couple of them walked in, and then all of a sudden, we had the right talent bar. And about a year later, we ended up launching an app that got 35 million downloads. Then we made no money for 10 years. Like as I said, I'm not very good at this clearly, but we've just been very, very, very persistent at solving these big problems.
Yeah, so you grit, resilience. But on that point, maybe then, because it's been a long journey and you guys are now like obviously iconic companies, as I mentioned. Was there a moment where you're like, you believed the pitch in the sense of like, of course, in that, I imagine that first VC deck, you're like, we're going to be a quadrillion-dollar company. Was there a particular moment in time? Was it more of a steady progress or you're like, okay, I'm actually onto something here that's way bigger than just me?
I think for me, it was a moment that came early. So we started in 2005, and like I said, we were working with these early customers, these Mac dealerships, and we're like, let's do a training camp. We were barely like 6 people. Let's do a training camp. They all seem to really want to know the software, and they want to start to understand how to sell the software because they all saw potential of selling it to other people. They knew the stores that were opening in their neighborhoods, and so we had very low expectations for this training camp, but we knew how to put on a show. A lot of us, a lot of the early team was LGBTQ, so we loved to throw a little bit of an event. So it was 45 people from around the world signed up for this. The people came from Saudi Arabia, they came from France, they came from Australia, they came from all over the US and Canada, Ireland, and they had all come because they believed in being a distributor for the software, not just a user. And that's when I knew that there were people that wanted to build businesses around this. And had we not created a community around our software and actually took a chance, even though we were a tiny company that didn't know a lot about how to really build a business, that built and built and built. And when you go to year 7, where we got our first VC investment of $30 million, and now that we're doing 2 training camps a year with hundreds of people coming, we did one in Montreal, then one in a US city. That was one of the things that really sold the investors. They were like, you have built a massive community of people that have built businesses around this. And that was something that was like a very early bet that we made.
Curious to hear you, Fred.
We had, obviously we launched a consumer company first. Now we're enterprise, but a lot of our growth to $2 billion of sales was in the consumer side first. We had this crazy thing after wasting 6 years of my life building a database. The initial product idea was, like kind of a search engine, but a box bigger where you could type full sentences about travel, and it would actually say, oh, let me do that for you and give you the answer. I just described ChatGPT, right? So we tried to build that with no money, and AI didn't exist. That was and so we were hacking away at that over and over again. And obviously we didn't even understand the leap that's happened since 22. And then as we were building this up, we had this massive lake of data. One of our data scientists had put up a black and white chart somewhere hidden on our website. And what it did is you entered, I'm in Montreal, I want to go to Miami. You could put any airport code, and it would tell you if you book your plane ticket on a Wednesday, you're going to save on average $6. And it was a black and white chart, but you could pick your airports, and it would give you this little chart that says which day of the week and how far ahead you should book. And the idea was to pitch to reporters, journalists, that they should write about our company, but it was a PR strategy. We said, but we know things, and we have this app that's a trip planner, and nothing worked. All of our stuff was crap, obviously, because, as I said, AI wasn't invented when we were trying to do this. And so we hit the New York Times, we hit one of the reporters, and the guy looked at it and said, I'm not going to write about your company, but I'm going to write about this black and white chart. And I remember I was going to Boston, there were 7 of us, and I got a text that said, the website is down, we're on Good Morning America. And literally, I opened the thing, and it started with Harry had broken up with his girlfriend, and they switched to, there's a website that will tell you that if you book your flight on Tuesday, you can save $6. And it went around the world. We got 10 million users that day. It got syndicated in Japanese. It was trending in the Middle East. It was completely insane. And that's when I understood what product market fit was. So we'd been hacking away at this enormous problem, and it turns out that the entire planet just wanted to know when they should buy an airplane ticket. And that was the original idea. We ended up building an app to do it. And we didn't know how to build an app. Like we didn't know how to code that because we were web guys. So we kind of hacked away same kind of garage stuff that you do. And then we put the app in the store. And we knew the airlines weren't going to really like that we were predicting when to buy a ticket. And I knew from my past days they were aggressive. And so we put the app, there's 20 of us by then, and we start drinking, because that's what you do when you launch an app. And then somebody's phone calls. It's the guy that had the iOS, like the store, like the developer. Phone calls, he puts his hands up, it's Apple. And I'm like, what do they want? And immediately and the app's been up for less than an hour. And in my head, I'm like, great, American Airlines is suing them. They're going to sue us. We're done. I'm like, okay, guys, put the beer back. Like, we're going to zero. It's over. And so I pick up the phone, and he's like, oh, I'm so-and-so, and I run Apple. I run all the leisure and consumer for Apple. And Apple does not call you when you release an app. If you're wondering, that's not what's supposed to happen. And I'm listening to this guy, and I'm waiting for it, and he goes, I need a favor. And I'm like, that's not what I was expecting. He's like, so your app is only available in the US. Could you open it up worldwide? So I go, So I put my hand on the thing to the guy that built the algorithm that was predicting the prices. And I go, so what happens if we release this worldwide? So he goes, I don't know. So I go, yep, we can do that right now. And so I'm like, I'll call you back. He's like, no, do it now. I will walk you through the thing, and you will click on every country, and we're going through it. Like, can we skip Nigeria? And he's like, yeah, don't do Russia, but I need you, is it the UK? And so we do this, I press a button, and then it goes live around the world. And then and the guy goes, thank you, I owe you one, man. And I say, wait, what? Like, dude, I have one question. Like, what the hell? Like, why are you guys calling us? And he says, there's a thread on Twitter and on Reddit running right now that because your app is killing it. It's the most downloaded app like on Apple right now because it's doing this one thing. There's a conspiracy theory that it's only in the US because only Americans should shave money on flights, and that somehow Apple is in this, and it's about to hit Tim Cook's desk, and I really don't need that right now. And so that's when we realized, like, that's how important product market fit is. Yeah.
Did you have also some crazy story where you convinced the OTAs to like give you all like trillions of data points of like all the searches that went nowhere? Like,
yeah, so that's how we got started. Once I got this stupid database to work, it was empty after 6 years. So it's actually not the travel agencies, but when you shop on Expedia, there's a system that you've never heard of from a company that was founded in the 1950s that connects all the travel agencies to the airline systems. It's like the gateway, and it's this horrible mainframe crap thing. And it's a company called Sabre, and one other one's called Amadeus. So I went to this multinational company, I talked my way into it, and we had nothing. We had $500,000 in the database, no app, nothing. And I said, I want you to give me all of the data you've ever accumulated and all of the data that you're gonna, and I want you to stream it to me. And he's like, okay, what are you gonna do with it? I don't know. How much are you gonna pay me? I have no money. What do you, like, what's in it for me? I'm like, I don't know, but it'll be cool, right? If you did that. And so they called security on me a few times, and I just kept trying a different guy. And then eventually I hit a guy that had been tasked with new projects. And he's like, okay. And so we negotiated a deal. We gave him a tiny bit of the company, some warrants, and then we got our data stream. And then by pure accident, a data scientist walked in. I didn't even know what that was. Like, the guy had a PhD in math. And people thought we had this massive engineering team. We predict prices, and we still do it, but we did it for 10 years, accurately, a year in advance. And what nobody realizes was one guy that wrote the algorithm in a weekend. And for 5 years, we didn't touch it. And there's this one dude called Patrick. And that's how 100 million downloads off of that. But I had to basically convince some poor guy to just give me all the data for a press release.
yeah, that's a great story.
But by the way, they made $100 million on those penny warrants I gave them. So it ended up okay.
On that data piece, Dax, it was like maybe 12 years ago, I walked into your office in Mile X, and you had all these screens everywhere. And I was like, what is going on exactly? And I was very surprised. You mentioned this piece of people and community, but at the same time, it seems like you guys are like super rigorous, extremely data-driven. Love to hear you were like, it feels like you're part of the first cohort of companies that were like at that level of like the X decibel. So curious where that came from.
Yeah, I think the customer journey is something that we fine tune, and you almost have to revise it and reimagine it continuously. At one point, when we moved out of that office, we moved into what we call the castle. It's like our HQ here in East Old Montreal. And on the third floor, the go-to-market floor, like from one end to the other, every stage of that floor is a different part of the customer journey, from from the lead all the way to the close, and then aftercare support. So it was nice to walk, investors, also potentially customers themselves, to see what the process is of like helping them succeed with Lightspeed. I think it's the only way to sort of scale go-to-market, scale all of the different parts of the business that are driving growth, is to measure it, right? You have to be able to stare at those numbers, especially when it's very people intensive. Like right now, we're scaling outbound sales teams in Europe. We're the #1 restaurant platform in Europe, and it's complicated, right? You've got all these different countries, you've got all of these different sales efforts, all these new managers who've scaled out in a couple of quarters. So you have to measure every piece of that and troubleshoot what's actually not performing. So it is really a core part of how we operate.
You spoke about customer journey, but I'm curious to hear the founder journey a little bit. You guys mentioned some of these like really important pivotal moments in the histories of your company. Is there one that stands out as like the most important like crucible moment, let's say, in the company's history? And maybe there's not a #1, but I'm curious to hear you, like, if there's any of those particular forks in the road that that changed your companies.
Yeah, I think for us, we went public in 2019. And so, there's this 7-year period of bootstrapping, another 7 years of venture capital. Venture capital was a tough period, right? You go into hyper-growth mode, but you actually build all of this new capability. We went completely into the cloud, diversified from retail into hospitality. But now, going public is almost like becoming a grown-up, right? It's like graduating high school, graduating college even. And now you're not beholden to individual investors. You're now beholden to your own performance, and the public will judge it. Like the public investors will judge it. So I had no finance background. I think it's one of those situations where I came to the realization that every year of being a founder, you have to throw away your job description and write a whole new one, and you sort of leave behind all of the things that you like doing. Like, the reason I started Lightspeed at the beginning, all I was trying to do was get a design award from Apple. I was a designer, I was a coder, and I had to kind of leave that behind. I had to give that to other people and do all of the things that were going to push the company forward, but were less comfortable for me. And I think
you suck at it the first time you do it,
really
which is the other thing, right? Yeah.
But it's the reality that if you don't do that, if you don't throw away your job description, if you don't make it, if you don't give people that role model of doing that, nobody else will do that, because you're going to ask people at the company to do impossible things that they're not comfortable with. If they don't see you doing it, they're not going to do it.
By the way, what he said there is one of the most important things you'll ever hear about being a founder, just as a general rule, that people do what they see you doing. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off,
100%.
but that's like really important.
And I think the finance one was the most terrifying. I think part of the reason I didn't get any investment for the first 7 years is I didn't understand it. I was like, I knew how to build revenue. I knew how to sell. I knew how to build. We got to 10 million in ARR without really having to go into that world. But I don't think you can really get around it when you go public. You have to really be able to. You have to be able to explain these things. So I think that was just I think the biggest example of throwing away the job description and immersing myself. The finance people, the accountants became my best friend. I really got in with them, and I just enjoyed it. It is my favorite phase of the company, because it's really down to your own personal what you bring to the table. Like, it's up to you whether you succeed, and then you have to like capture that for the public imagination. So that is, I think, a pivotal moment, because it unlocked a lot of potential for us, but it also, on a personal level, it just forced me to grow. And I think that even in the early stages, it's so necessary to be able to get into that mode and show people in the company that we need to do that.
You mentioned this notion of growth, right? As a leader, you want to be able to grow and show that example. Fred, you mentioned, you interrupted Dax. Hey, that's really key. How did you manage to yourself kind of to surpasser, become better?
There's this moment when you start, there's you and maybe another guy, and you're doing everything, and then you reach a point where you maybe have 7 people or 10 people, anything under, let's call it 20, I'll round up. And then you can go around like, what are you working on? Don't do that. Who told you to do that, right? But then there's this threshold when you reach anything above 30, 40, 50. And then there's all these milestones, 100 people, 200, 1,000, the rules change on you. But when you reach the point that you can no longer walk around whatever place you've put yourself, whatever garage you're in, and know what people are doing, there's this moment where you go, holy shit, I don't know what I'm doing. Because now you have to build people, you have to get people to do the right thing when you're not in the room, they have to have context, they have to have autonomy, and every founder I know from that day on struggles with this problem. And you read Zuckerberg or Hastings or any of these guys, Schmidt has written about this, and you can see you get 100,000 employees, they're still wrestling with this problem. And that's culture, context, leadership. And there's thousands of ways to do a bad job at it, and all of the advice you'll get is crap. And all the guys that are management experts and the consultants will break everything. And there's only one way to do it that works, and it's the way that works for you. And the way he does it won't work at my company, and the way I do it probably wouldn't work. I mean, we could compare notes, I can learn from him and vice versa. 100%. This is this fundamental understanding of what it is to build a culture, build a company, build a team. And they sound like overused words, but they're not. Like it's this unbelievably complicated equation. And so you'll see companies like Airbnb is an interesting one because, I mean, it's not a secret they try to buy us. I'm best friends with Lawrence Tosi that was CFO there. He's an investor in us now. But Brian Chesky built this incredible business. They do one thing and he makes all the decisions. And this literally changed, but until they got to an $80 billion, and it was all him and his designers, and you would go there and they would tell you, yeah, I have to run this by Brian. And he reached a wall where, Airbnb is actually below its IPO price. And if you'd bought Expedia, which is supposed to be a bad company, when Airbnb listed, you would have doubled your money. You bought Booking, you would have tripled your money. If you bought Airbnb, you would be down negative 12%. And it's on culture. Great business model, great company, incredible product. So that part of realizing, how do I build a group of 1,000 people that are going to work in a way? And it's so frustrating because you're like, get out of the way, you're slow. Why are you doing it that way? Why do I have 50 people on this? How come this doesn't work? We used to be able to do this in a night. It's taking a year. Like that, I do not know a single founder that will not tell you that's the hardest, the most important thing. And you are constantly reaching your own limits, feeling incompetent, feeling like an imposter. It took us a decade to even understand the problem.
It's interesting because company culture really comes from the top. It's really a lot about you because you set the tone for the company. If you're always panicked, the company's going to panic all the time, right? The best thing you can do is, as a CEO, is like really learn how to meditate and be calm.
Yes.
Because everybody's going to draw that from you. I invested in my spiritual foundation from the beginning of the company. Now I need even more tools because there's so much going on. But you find the worst the company can be in its worst moments are a reflection of your own weaknesses, right? And then, of course, the best of the company is the best of you. And so you do need to build a culture around some of the other people that fill in some of the gaps. You got to be conscious of those things. And then, like you're saying, you've got to build a system that you are not the blocker, right? It's about empowering. It's about sharing ownership. If everything has to go through you, it's not a scalable system. And nobody will mirror that behavior. Nobody will try to make it scalable under them if you don't, right?
There's a few things. I'm assuming some people run companies, or you want to build one, or why are you here, right? Maybe it's the muffins, but apart from that, presumably this is useful. So again, what he said is super critical. There's a few things. Culture is not your values on your website, the poster. Culture is what you do as a leader, what you value, and what you punish. That one system, right? So if you want people to focus on engineering, you'd better care about the engineering. If you start caring about the finance, you're actually going to see people so it's how you behave. And when somebody does something, you say, great, here's whatever the reward system is. Don't do that again. It's literally that. People will emulate that in ways that you can't even anticipate. That's one. Two, your greatest strengths are your biggest weaknesses when this kicks in. And this is why it's hard. So if you're an amazing coder or an amazing designer, and you might actually be overpowering everybody, and you have this person that would be better at solving this problem, or maybe they're a better designer than you, and because you're so good at it, they'll never speak up. The other one that's crazy, you might have hit a version of this. I have this thing called the brown sugar fallacy. So this is a story. So we were moving between Cambridge and Montreal. We had 2 offices. We probably had 10 people in both. And so my co-founder had moved to Cambridge. I was in Montreal. It was a decent way to build culture. And so I would show up 2 days a week, do a bunch of stuff, come back, and he'd sometimes come over. We found it was a decent way of doing it. This is when Zoom didn't exist and you couldn't do a hangout. You had to be physically in the right place. And one day I walked in, and by then, I think we actually had probably 50 or 60 people. I opened up the thing to make some coffee, and I noticed they only had white sugar in the pantry. And I just made a random comment. Oh, it's interesting, we don't have brown sugar, right? Like, and by the way, I don't put sugar in my coffee, like, just to be clear about this, right? Immediately, 3 people stood up, started running in circles, people I'd never met, and they were like, oh, we gotta get, and I'm like, whoa, calm down, like, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, we need brown sugar. I'm like, who said that? I was like, you did. I'm like, wait, what, sorry, right? But here's the important part of that. I told everybody, this doesn't matter, forget I said it. I come back the next week, and I open the pantry. What do you think was there?
Oh, sure.
Every kind of brown sugar you could imagine. The blocks, the chunky version, all, like, the whole pantry was full of
And you didn't
brown.
appreciate it.
I don't use sugar. It's just, brown sugar is slightly better. You shouldn't eat sugar. But so I literally sat on the floor cross-legged and looked at this pantry for probably 10 minutes. And I'm like, if this happened with sugar, what happens when I say, oh man, why don't we try this? And what you realize is very, very quickly, people will not tell you what they're thinking. You won't get the feedback loops. All you're gonna get is, you're awesome, you're so great, you're so smart, I love working here. Like, the feedback loops get cut off.
You know what is the barometer? Like, how I know that the company is healthy in terms of its internal culture is when people feel comfortable to Slack me and tell me everything that's going wrong. And we've had moments where there's been leaders in the company where they've surrounded themselves with yes people, and everybody does exactly that. They're trying to just make one person happy, an American president in some examples, and nobody tells the truth, and the company really starts to make major mistakes, and a lot of things fester in the company because you're trying to please somebody who's so insecure that they're trying to get they just want that. They want everything to be validated by them, or they only want to hear the good thing. That is so cancerous for a company.
And so he's hitting on a really important point.
I want to hear all the bad stuff, and I want people to feel it at every level of the hierarchy, and not be hierarchical is important, and every person feel comfortable. But how do you do that? I think how you do that is being known as a listener. You have to do that with your customers too. We had a conversation about listening. That changes everything, right?
So I spent the next 10 years of my life designing everything I could so that when something didn't work, by every means possible, I would hear about it. That literally what he said, he didn't know I was going to say that. We didn't coordinate this thing, right? So it tells you there is some truth in what we're saying. This is like independently evolved. Like, foundationally, I was like, I will only be successful if what we build by every mechanism, every rule, how I behave, what I reward, what I punish, people are constantly telling me everything sucks. Like, and so, and then you actually, and not in a negative way, but we can improve this. And one of the reasons we were successful through COVID and all the crazy stuff, and I'm not good at a business model, so we didn't make money for 10 years, all that kind of stuff, and we became super profitable now, and we're growing. It's because we got that one thing right. And that's what's gotten us through everything.
One more thing to build on this is when there is brutal honesty and transparency through different levels of the company, and we're also brutally honest with our board, what is the result of that? The result of that is trust. And when you need trust with your board, when you need trust with your employees to do something difficult, it's all of that brutal honesty that built that trust that gives you permission or buys you the permission to lead people through some very difficult moment. or a difficult change or something you're going to ask for them. And I think that when we've been doing Lightspeed for 20 years, there's been lots of like big things that we've needed to do and change. I'm sure with Hopper, that is such a valuable thing to have to call upon in moments, right? Trust is the unlocker for a lot of future prosperity and good and things that you can build, right?
I would even add to that. This is obvious if you've started a company, but if you're starting, it might not be. If you have a really good idea, it makes no sense in present context. So a lot of startups don't work, and I'll get back to the trust thing because this is what I think it's mostly for. That in present context, most startups fail because the idea is too incremental. You said something to somebody, it's a feature, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, everything works like this, I'm gonna do this thing slightly different and $1 billion, right? Profit. But think of this, right? Like all content will be streamed free on the internet and random people will tell you to buy skincare and you'll do it and you won't watch TV anymore. I just described YouTube. There'll be a taxi cab, a licensed certified taxi cab. You'll be waiting in the rain, looking at your phone for a stranger to pick you up in a Toyota Corolla. You will not go stay in a hotel, you will go in some weird guy's house, right? Like I just described Uber and everything. The ideas make no sense when you launch them, right? Like in present day. And as you pivot, as things happen to your company, you're gonna have to make decisions. And if you're good at what you do, when you say, oh, we need to stop doing X and do Y, that too will make no sense.
Yeah.
But at that point, somebody put X million dollars in your company. The only way you're gonna get consensus, your employees have to buy in, your investors have, it's if they trust you. And the only way that they're gonna trust you is if for every minute of every hour before that, you were doing the right thing, telling the truth. So many companies blow up, so many founders blow up their company because when that moment happens, they see the future. The investor that can't, it's not his job is to give you the money to see the future. They go, well, you fucked me on this thing, so there's no way. Like I can,
and there the story ends.
It's done, you're toast.
Yeah.
Even if the company exists, you get sold, you work for Google. Like
There's so many moments in Lightspeed history where that trust got us to the next moment. It's so true. Yeah. So sorry, we forgot about questions.
This is why we're here. Yeah, I think at the root of this is kind of like intellectual honesty you guys are describing at the root cause. And is there? You mentioned meditation, Dax. I'm curious to hear if what are the techniques you use to like not believe your own BS in a certain extent, or at least like kind of like challenge yourself.
Yeah, I think definitely there are. You have moments in the roller coaster of building a company where there's lows for sure, but then there's these extreme highs that you experience too. And I think we have a great degree of humility. Like we're honest, we stay humble. But when you're at these little peaks, you're like, there's nothing wrong in the company. And that's actually when I think we've been through moments like that where we ignored and let get worse some of the things in the company because we deluded ourselves with some success in the moment. And I think. You asked me how do you stay grounded. I think you got to stay humble and realize that wherever you are in the roller coaster, there are things to be paranoid about. There are things to focus on. There's things to build in the company. Don't drink your own Kool-Aid. I think that's important. On a personal level, I think it's really, really important to invest in yourself spiritually, mentally, and consequently that's mentally, and then physically, because body and soul together, that's your instrument. Those two things become your instrument together, and you're no good to the world if you can't create change without one or the other.
He said the word roller coaster, which is really important. And if you have not been in a startup or you don't understand. It's like here, oh my God, we're going to be so rich, we're going to buy an island and clone dinosaurs on it, right? And then here, like, oh my God, we're going out of business. And that swing, it's like Monday, 9 a.m., right? Like you just swung in like the first 20 minutes. It's like not even lunchtime. I'm not talking over. You have no understanding. And actually what's really dangerous is when you have a persistent period of success, because then you don't see all the crap. And then when you actually hit a low, you're like, holy crap, our foundation is garbage. Everybody goes through this. He said spirituality. I'm going to say the same thing. I'm just going to use different words. I actually believe he's right. You have two nervous systems. Human beings evolved with what's called the sympathetic nervous system. This is the thing you use to think and to do math and everything. But you have a thing called the parasympathetic. That's what regulates your sleep, your hormones, everything else. What I described the roller coaster, it basically triggers your fight or flight mechanism that we evolved over 50,000 years. You are constantly thinking you're going to get eaten by a tiger or you're going to catch the biggest mammoth in the world. Your brain chemistry will short circuit. Like there's no human being that's evolved to handle that. Like they don't deploy people in military situations without rest for 18 years because you would kill everybody in the field out of sheer exhaustion. And that's what you're going through if you work in a startup. So it is super important. Exercise, diet kind of matters, especially as you get older, but like meditation and yoga will actually save your life. Like otherwise your body will shut down on you.
Now that we've sufficiently terrified everybody about
Yes.
creating a company, don't think they'll
Good
do
job.
any of this.
Good job.
But it's a lot of fun, right?
Oh yeah.
From the outside perspective, you guys have built these like tremendous companies, but it seems like you did something a little bit that was unexpected. You started these second chapters, and it feels, again, from the outside, so I don't want to imbue meaning, but it feels like there's more purpose in these second chapters in terms of what you're trying to do. Curious to hear you what led to Deep Sky, what led to Age of Union.
Go ahead.
Conservation, I mean, I grew up in BC, right? I live now in Montreal, but at age 17, I already started my software journey. I was already a committed nerd. But at 17, growing up in BC, camping, my parents were refugees with the cheap outdoor activities. I was shocked at age 17 to see that they were clear-cutting 1,000-year-old trees on the west coast of Vancouver Island. I joined a protest over there. We saved it, which showed me the power of collective action. But it was the drive across the island, across hours and hours of clear-cut everything, moonscape, that said to me, when I have the experience, the funds, and the time, I'm coming back to this problem, and I'm going to make as much of a difference as I can, because it really scarred me. It also showed me something that's possible when you get together to make a change and to protest and to weigh in on the situation. So when I did step down from Lightspeed in 2022 as the CEO and became the chair, I had 2 years before I had to come back. but it was an amazing 2 years where I built Age of Union, putting $40 million across 10 conservation projects, and actually taking a page from the startup playbook, which was like, I'm not going to just write checks. I'm going to go on the ground to these places and see if I can survive a jungle, first of all, which there's a new book called Echoes from Eden where I talk about all of those journeys, and I was going to offer everybody a book. I forgot to bring them, but if you guys would like a book, Taurus is going to circulate on the email list. We'll create a pickup point. But going on the ground to these places, you kind of like, it's the startup mode, right? It's like figuring out, not with the hubris and the ego that, oh, I can fix these things, going on the ground with these frontline heroes and understanding what does it take to save an ecosystem? What does it take to save a species? How are you prioritizing all of this? And they all look like startups to me, and I could mentor them, but also listening to them because they are living it day after day. I mean, there was one startup guy that went to visit Paul Rosalie in Jungle Keepers in the Amazon, and was like, oh, well, we could just build a sprinkler system to fight the Amazon fires. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. You got to go in and you got to listen and really get immersed. And that's actually been, I think, it was two of the most special years of my life of really digging into that and seeing all of these projects blossom and bloom. Like, I just went to a gala for Jungle Keepers. In the last 4 years, we've protected 130,000 acres of the Amazon in Peru. And you can go on this treehouse and see every direction, everything protected, and for forever. It's amazing. It also led me, . 'Cause, 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 ' So just supporting these incredible people, being a part of that fight, it does fill you with purpose. And when I share these stories at Lightspeed or bring some of these folks in to speak, share a film, because we got into film too. You got to bring people to, these places are hard to get to. I started doing film. We won an Emmy for a film called Wildcat, which you can see on Amazon Prime. Just got shortlisted for an Oscar for another movie that I did with DiCaprio called Yanuni. Yeah, and then there's a film, Jane Goodall, we're doing a documentary on her. So like, that's coming out later this fall. So there's all of these things that you realize that you can do to support the overall mission. And for me, Lightspeed does have a really important purpose. You got to supply those local retailers and restaurateurs with the tools that the big box, big chains have. They also make the more sustainable choices, the community-driven choices. And so that unlocking them with technology has real purpose. My employees can go in their neighborhoods and they can see our work helping these businesses be their best. So there is a lot of purpose there, but I think that the folks at the company also want to see a leader that's driven with doing something for the greater good. And again, a role model, company culture. It's like you role model doing something for something bigger than you, bigger than all of us. And I think it creates also the right culture and the right motivations of the company.
So by the way, that's really important, what he just said. Interestingly, our journey was similar. And now you're about to find out how much crazier I am than him, because he actually did something that made sense. Like, I'll explain where we ended up. Very similar thing, we're making people travel. So they're gonna buy the plane ticket anyway. I don't think we've actually sold an incremental plane ticket, but I was like, we gotta do something. So we started looking at how you could prevent the CO2 emissions and all the basic stuff you would imagine, and plant some trees, got interested in it. Then I realized, oh, you can do ecosystem restoration. I looked at what was out there, it looked like fraud. I was like, wow, that's so bad. So we sent our data scientists to Kenya, Madagascar. We looked at a whole bunch of, I didn't have time to do it because I was still, I wasn't like on a sabbatical. But we did that, and we realized there was these nonprofits that were only hiring women in the developing world in the right places. They were planting the right kind of tree. And why women? Because then they have income that isn't just the man, and it equalizes society, and it's more likely that their kids, the women, are going to go to school after that. Get this going. So we've planted 30 million trees like over the past 7 years. We're the only travel company that does it. And so we start to do that. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I'm like, okay, we got this thing going. And I'm like, we should put that in the press. So I go and I give an interview. I think it was Bloomberg NEF. And I'm pretty confident, in an interview, done it a while. This woman was 21 years old probably, and 10 seconds in, she tears my head off. It's like, well, what about this and what about that, and how do you know that? And so what it is, and I was super naive, there's so much greenwashing and bullshit around actually doing something and buying credits, and some developer in Kenya sold a forest and Delta bought credits, that I'd stumble into that. So I came off that interview, which was the worst interview of my life. I just failed at every question. I realized I don't know what CO2 is. Like, I don't know where it came from. I don't know how much is up there. Like, she'd really destroyed me. Like, my PR girl was like, what happened? I'm like, I don't understand like, how I failed so hard. So I said, well, if I'm gonna give interviews about this, I gotta have answers. So I started reading about climate change. And this is the only time this ever happened to me. I started reading the crap on LinkedIn, and then the crap that they read to write that. I'm trying to figure out. And I'm like, this is wrong. The math doesn't work. Like, the warming, and we have 30 years, and Paris, and we got to do these things, and it'll all be okay. So this would be 2021. And I ended up reading the raw IPCC data. You can download a gigabyte of stuff and just read through that. I'd read everything, and I'm doing this at night. And my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm reading all the IPCC data. She's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I don't know. And so then I started downloading the raw data and rebuilding their models. I'm clearly a data nerd, right? And I have no friends. So I was doing that. So I'd work until like 9 p.m., put our daughter to bed. This is a big reason why I was doing it, actually. And I would crunch it till 3 a.m. And my wife's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. And then I came at a point, and I went to my wife and said, the IPCC is wrong about climate change. And she was like, oh my God, like this again. Like, they have everything wrong. Like, it's going to be way worse everything's going to start to collapse like in 2025. And this is the pandemic because we had the negative data of the economy. And I said, they have it wrong. Like, and she's like, look, I don't know, just call somebody who cares. And so I called Lawrence Tosi, who's the CFO of Blackstone, super successful guy, and he was a friend. And I'm like, I need an hour of your time, and we were all quarantined. And I get on Zoom, and I said, I want to show you a deck. And it's literally like, and I'd worked a year on this, it's literally 50 slides that explains that our civilization is going to collapse, and we're going to run out of food. And he goes through this, but it's all backed up, and here's why the model's wrong, and he goes this like, and he's like, sorry, what? And I'm like civilization is the planet's gonna be fine, right? By the way, this is true. Like the planet has seen 5 mass extinctions, and the last one, 95% of what was alive disappeared, and we came out of that. So in 1 million years, once we've blown our civilization off the earth, and there's 150,000 hunter-gatherers left, and we're sitting around a campfire holding a rectangular black rock in our hand, talking about the time when the gods could talk to each other and fly, like the dolphins are going to be super happy. So we need to restore the ecosystem, but the way we're going now, it's going to be okay. Over 1 million years or even 100,000, we're going to be a blip in that. But I kind of enjoy electricity and food, and I'd like my daughter to have that. So we started looking at this problem. So I went to Lawrence Tosi and I said this, and I remember he looked at this for like an hour, and he looked up and said, so civilization is going to collapse in our lifetime, and our children will bear the brunt. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, so what do we do? I'm like, well, we have to take out 1,000 billion tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere and bury it. And he looked up and said, okay. And so we started Deep Sky under that premise. So, and this is, you think the startup thing is dark, this is going to ruin your entire evening, right? But like, fundamentally,
It's like terrified them.
this is worse than everything. And it's not about the environment, it's purely carbon management. So what's happening, I don't know if you've noticed, the warming's out of control. We blew through the Paris numbers, like we're at 1.6, we're ahead, and it feels wrong, like the forest fires. So I don't know if you know this, but in the last 2 years, Canada emitted more CO2 than India. Because when we run our numbers, we don't count the trees that are burning, and the molecule doesn't care if it came from an exhaust pipe or a burning tree, it's all CO2. And so here's the really terrifying fact. You think all the CO2 comes from us, we warm the planet, and it's our fault. Well, actually, almost 98% of the CO2 is natural. So we put up 33 billion tons of CO2 a year, roughly. Depends on what data source, it's an approximation. But the planet emits CO2 when a tree burns. And actually at night, a forest outgasses. And the ocean contains 38,000 billion tons of CO2. And when you warm it, it outgasses and it actually picks up CO2. So there's a natural cycle that emits and recaptures 780 billion tons a year for our 33 billion that we emit naturally. So that means that the Earth naturally emits and recaptures what we take a year to produce roughly every 6 weeks. You know what we did? We broke that cycle. We're in a runaway effect. Even if I shut down the economy now, we ride horses and hunt our food, we're going to 5 degrees. And I have a model that proves it. So I called the IPCC and I said, explain yourself. And like, who are you? I'm like, explain your crap. Why are you telling people this? And they actually said, well, actually, we have models that say you're right, but we have to throw them out because they're too pessimistic and use the mean because we're scientists. And this is, I realized something. By the way, there's no conspiracy. Sure, oil people are lying to you. Some of them, not all of them actually. But there's no guy in a cloak trying to take over the world in a castle. That's not how it works. But what's happened is, if you look at the history of humanity, the scientific method has been pretty good. It allowed us to invent the wheel and the internal combustion engine and science and math versus calling somebody a witch and burning them, right? Like you would argue that there's progress in the scientific method because it requires a hypothesis to be proven with facts, and it requires an experiment to be replicated before a scientist will say, it's true. Until that happens, you say, we're not sure, right? And that is everything around you, the tech, everything comes from that, Descartesian revolution. Here's the problem. Until you have the data that the planet is in a runaway warming effect, it's only a model, a hypothesis. You need proof. But guess what? Because it's a nonlinear curve, it's like COVID spreading. By the time we reach 1.6, we're already locked in to an outcome. And the scientists can't say, oh, we're screwed. First of all, because that's not what science is. It's a bad idea to go on stage and say that, although that's what I just did. But then they need proof. But you know what? By the time we have the data points, it's going to be too late. So here's the real math. The time to start the energy transition to avoid this runaway effect, when we had to switch off fossil fuels, build the nuclear, build the renewables, to be able to have the nice curve that everybody's telling you is going to happen, was 1945. By the 1980s, it was locked in. So we have no choice. It doesn't matter the cost. It doesn't matter like what else you believe. We have to A, stop emitting, all of it. Everything and we're stuck on fossil fuels. If you haven't, read Václav Smil, How the World Really Works. This is 80-year-old dude that's been writing books about how energy is at the base of all civilization. We are stuck with fossil fuels for 50 years. It doesn't matter how fast we want to do it, and it's about infrastructure. There's math behind that. So we have to capture every chimney and bury it, and then we have to reverse 200 years of fossil fuel emissions in the next 20. And even if we do that, it's going to be bad, because it's almost certain that the Gulf Stream is going to shut down, and the monsoon that feeds 1 billion people in India is going to shift south. All the glaciers are already going to melt. It's locked in. And there's nothing you can do about that. It's locked in. The only thing we can do is start pulling out what's there and stop emitting. And I promise you this one thing is true. In your lifetime, only 2 things will really matter. The last 200 years have been about steel, concrete, all the things that built our civilization, oil, fertilizers. This is what our entire civilization has been built on. The next 200 years will be AI and carbon management. We have to terraform the planet that we live on because it is no longer suitable to support our civilization. We just don't know it yet. So Musk wants to terraform Mars. Deep Sky was started to terraform Earth.
So it's not carbon capture.
So you are capturing carbon. So there's 2 things. If you let a chimney stack output a ton of carbon, right? You're getting, depending on what you're burning, about 15% is the CO2, the warming. The methane's really bad and dodgy, but it actually disintegrates in about 6 to 12 years. It's a complex organic molecule. Every ton of CO2 that we put up in the atmosphere is going to be there. The half-life is 300 years. That means half of that ton will be in the atmosphere in 300 years. And by the way, the other half takes 10,000 years to take out. So you have to cap a chimney and split the CO2. The water vapor's fine. There's some bad stuff like cyanide, but know how to deal with it. And then bury that underground. Or we can stop using fossil fuels and starve to death, because there's a direct relationship. We need energy, and the energy we have is that. We need to go as fast as we can, but there's all sorts of reasons why it's not going to work. By the way, the real solution, I know there's issues with this. If we had not given up on nuclear in the 70s, we would be awash with free energy. Your Tesla would have 6 million miles, and iPhones would not have chargers, because there would be a battery the size of my fingernail that would run for 1 million years. But we didn't do that. I don't know if you noticed, a cell phone when I was born would have been the size of Place Ville-Marie, and it would have cost $4 billion. Today, I have one in my pocket, and so you have one.
Why do you think that people aren't investing enough in nuclear fusion?
It's because I'm a child of the 80s,
Yeah.
right? And so when I was in school in the US, we were taught
There's a lot of terror around
duck and cover.
Yeah.
And so it didn't help that the weapon that would cause the apocalypse was called nuclear,
Yeah.
and the energy source was called nuclear. Everybody lost their minds. They're like, oh my.
Yeah.
And so it got so negative. That's one. 2, nuclear waste, right? Real problem. Actually false.
But not nuclear fusion.
No, not even fusion. That's super hard, and there's guys working on that. But this is something nobody knows.
Like, do we have enough people working on that?
There's a few. There should be a lot more. But
Yeah.
more than that, there are 4 power plants in the U.S. that were put up in the Carter administration. There's a particular way to burn nuclear fuel that will consume 98% of the waste.
Yeah.
So they have a way of recycling it. After the U.S. put these 4 plants on, the Carter administration banned all production using this technology. Do you know why? Because you know what that 2% is? Enriched plutonium. So we are able to burn the rod down to 0,
Yeah.
but what you're left with, you can make a bomb with, and they looked at it and said, that is way too dangerous.
Right.
There are ways to, thorium will do it. You don't need fusion, but we didn't do it. We got scared, right? The third thing that's really important, the oil and gas companies lobbied for 30 years to convince you that nuclear waste was unmanageable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. But too late, it's not going to be fast enough. Solar's going to work. So got to cap the chimneys. If you let that ton escape in the atmosphere, it goes from 15% to 430 parts per million, which is the current concentration. So that means you had 150,000 molecules per million at the chimney, and now you have 400. Not 400,000, 400. So your cost of removing in the atmosphere is literally 1,000 times more expensive. So every ton we let go is going to cost society at least $2,000. And of course, I'm an idiot. We didn't tackle the easy problem. We're going for the atmospheric one. So we are trying to suck out, capture, 1,000 billion tons out of the atmosphere and bury it. We actually have something running. We built the first plant in North America, and it's been up for, if you've seen it, it's in Alberta, and we're trying to build one everywhere in the world.
To scale that is the real challenge, right?
Nothing works. The math
Yeah.
doesn't work. We don't have the time. There's not enough energy. It's like there's 0% chance of success.
I think wonderful, great. I think that there's a number of reports as well that there's a lot of things that are nature-based solutions that are not being prioritized, right? I think that's really interesting to pursue, and I think the Canadian government has gotten wise to this because I've seen some ads for it in the last couple of years. The way we do agriculture, the way we do forestry, the way that we're not working with the ocean correctly. There's a lot of things that we do on massive scale. We tend to think about this problem through consumer car use, consumer airline use, because
That's irrelevant, by the way.
but
irrelevant.
totally irrelevant. The oil and gas industry has also convinced everybody that that's who's to blame. It's us when it's industry and so on.
This is super important what he said.
Nature-based solutions. So I want to leave you with a bit of hope. Like we can take a lot of carbon while we're figuring this out.
You have to do both.
You have to do the nature-based solutions. It is important to do restoration. It is important of natural areas.
So
important to protect pristine areas.
You have to restore all the ecological stuff is super important because even if you fix the carbon
buys
problem
you time.
and the biosphere collapses, we're going to have a problem. So he's 100% right. The thing you have to remember is we have to do everything. The nature restoration, the way we're treating the ecosystems is going to come to bite us. This should be obvious. They're going to be fossil fuels. You have no choice. Your ideology doesn't matter. The molecule doesn't care. Capture, and we need to remove. By the way, this is really important. You know who invented the carbon footprint? British Petroleum's advertising agency in 2003. They said,
shift the blame.
if we convince everybody that they have personal responsibility,
Then it's
they
not
will
our
stop
fault.
blaming us. And it worked.
Yeah. Totally.
I think I'll bug you guys on this for a while. So 2 takeaways for me. One, go to YouTube, type in Fred Lalonde Deep Sky. You have a really good video that you did. It's like 20 minutes long. It is absolutely friggin' terrifying, basically backing up what Fred just said with some really good data. And I think it's very, very, very revealing. And then everyone in this audience, if you choose to, you get a copy of Dax's book. I want to be respectful of your time. Maybe 1 or 2 final questions. One is, I want to go back to just building companies. What can we do to have more? Everyone says we're going to be the next Lightspeed. We need more Lightspeeds. We need more Hoppers. I imagine you get this question all the time. What can be done to help promote bigger companies, scaling them globally from here?
I'll let you go.
So I know you guys like cheered the building company thing, but I actually believe one of the best ways to solve these really fundamental problems, whether it's ecosystem, whether it's carbon management, is to build companies. Because when we invented money, we stopped having to kill each other for food, right? That's the fundamental. It's made up, right? You know, money's not real, right? Like it's like a construct. So if you actually figure out a way for something to generate revenue and cash flow and get investment, you're multiplying your ability to affect that. So you can do something super evil, right? Like and make a lot of money. You can do something that's just there to make money, but it's that capitalism is a really good lever for change. So I actually think starting companies is a good idea. A lot of these problems, so the ecosystem stuff, AI is going to be a huge breakthrough. What I would encourage you to do is if you can find something that you're passionate about and that is actually capable of scaling, that's actually something valuable. You should found the company that you're really passionate about, and you know, maybe you guys are smarter than us and you'll do that thing first rather than building 3 other things before that are right. So, but that is actually not a joke. Like, policy goes so far, personal responsibility is a hoax in my opinion in most of these things, but you can actually use the tools of capitalism for greater good. Making money is not inherently evil, by the way.
No, I think that's a really good point. You know, and it connects to the environmental conversation. People say capitalism is bad, social media is bad, the internet's bad, AI is bad. None of these things are intrinsically good or bad. These are human inventions that can be used for good and bad. And capitalism can accelerate good, right? You can use it because it has in many cases. You can use it to accelerate something negative, or you can all make the right consumer choices to accelerate something very fast in the right direction. So that is the power of building the next set of companies. I think that the tips for how do you build the next incredible company are, number one, I think what I've learned through Lightspeed is you have to build something that people need enough that they're going to spend money on it. Right? And I think that we were having a great conversation backstage about listening intimately to customers and not sitting in a room and thinking, what does the market need? Like, what's my brilliant, co-founder and I think? Actually hearing about what they actually want, or you get maybe an initial idea and you're like, how do we expand on this? You actually have to understand what they're going to pay for, and that's really how you get to that product market fit. And then I think that companies are afraid of sales and afraid of go-to-market, and we've never been that way. I never ever gave a free beta. It was always charged for software, because the revenue is the lifeblood of the company. It's the only proof that an investor has, or that you have to yourself, that you actually have something that people find that's worth buying. An investor is never going to understand your industry. They're never going to understand how valuable your product is. They're never going to understand anything other than somebody put money down for this, and they need the product more than they need the money, right?
But those two things are the answer. Like, if you're starting a company, just do what he just said. Like, obsess on your customers and focus on your revenue. By the way, proof in point, last board meeting at Deep Sky, they have $161 million of ARR. And they spend all their time going to the worst industrial companies, going, how do I get you to buy a goddamn carbon credit? Like, it's the only focus of the company. So, like, it's the same principle that he put there. It's the same thing we do at Hopper. It's why he's been successful. If there's two things that you do, it's the two things he just said.
Yeah. Listen to customers and sell.
And make money.
100%. And you'll have happy customers, and ultimately that's something to be really proud of, right?
Fred, Dax, I just want to say on behalf of everyone, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. Maybe a round of applause, please, for these guys. Really appreciate it, and it really means a lot to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.